We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
The three-ring circus of American politics continues as contenders enter the 2024 race. Biden gets a rude awakening from the public, and Trump faces yet more legal challenges. All this and more on today's packed show. You're listening to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. I want to take just a moment to say a special thank you to our listeners out in Cadillac, Missouri on WATT 1240 AM and 106.1 FM. Thanks for being here. And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. And as the 2024 GOP primary kicks off, we're joined by Liberty Nation's longtime host of this here show, Mr. Tim Donner, also senior political analyst over at LibertyNation.com. Do go and check out his writing, because he has been following the 2024 rumblings ever since the time began. Now, Tim, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Mark.
And I've got to ask, we've had, in just this last week, we've had Tim Scott join the race. DeSantis is apparently all in now. What do you make of it?
Well, I get the impression in watching DeSantis and Scott and Haley, Nikki Haley, for example, that they felt when they lined up presidential campaigns that Donald Trump's going to be very vulnerable, that even if he runs, certainly the Republican Party wants to turn the page on the 45th president. But I think things have changed a lot in the meantime, not the least of which, of course, was all these legal entanglements, which have paradoxically mounted Trump's lead to what looks like insurmountable. However, none of these people have really been out campaigning. And I'll tell you, the reaction to the first and maybe the second Trump-related outrageous scandals was, we're going to cleave to the guy because we need to stick together, Republicans say, in the face of these assaults from the Democrats. But I think that might change as his legal problems mount. But nevertheless, for Ron DeSantis, for Tim Scott, for Nikki Haley, I think they thought the field would be far more open than right now it appears to be. But what we're looking at, I think, for people who are political junkies, is something of a replay of 2016, when you had a multi-candidate field running against a presumed virtual incumbent in Hillary Clinton, because she was so well known and was following up Barack Obama. So that we don't really know what will happen from here. DeSantis has to prove that he can take a punch and throw one. Tim Scott has to prove that a positive vision for a balkanized America is a campaign that can work, is viable in an environment that's so bitterly divided in this country. And then Nikki Haley has to hope she can overcome the fact that she's got Tim Scott from her own state, South Carolina, who has essentially muted her campaign and made her really just an appendage for now. So it's an exciting time. I think Ron DeSantis somehow has a lot to prove, which you wouldn't have thought he would, given his landslide victory in Florida, to be reelected as governor. But it's going to be a three-ring circus. So, Mark, I advise you and me and everyone else to buckle their seatbelts.
Absolutely. Funny you mentioned that Donald Trump seems to be having this almost antimatter effect when news of his most recent legal battles come out. It just seems to push him up in the polls. And I'm wondering if, and I'm sure this, it can't possibly be happening because it'd be utterly unethical of the New York court system. But I hear the judge in the Alvin Bragg case, a case, bear in mind, that nobody has ever been charged with before, but now Trump is apparently indicted for. The trial will begin in March 2024, which is essentially full campaign season, isn't it?
Yes, well, that's the month of Super Tuesday. And so we'll really see what happens when the rubber meets the road and there's some sort of verdict or movement heavily in one direction in that case. But you've got to think, I mean, even with a New York jury, it's very questionable as to whether they can convict Trump. But you look at it, the one outcome, he gets convicted, he turns into even more of a martyr. And he doesn't get convicted, and it makes him even stronger than he is now. So I've never seen a case in all my years following politics, and that's more than half a century now. Yes, I'm showing my age. I've never seen scandal be such a positive factor for a candidate as it is for Donald Trump. At least at this point.
I'm not a Star Wars fan as such, but I believe that Obi-Wan Kenobi says just before Darth Vader kills him, if you strike me down, it will only make me stronger. And that it seems like the Obi-Wan campaign is in full throttle. Now, with Scott, Haley, and DeSantis in the race, do you think that some are canceling out the other? You said, of course,
yes,
that Haley's campaign is almost unimportant now that Scott's in the race. But do you think voters will be looking, rather than at 4 candidates, at just 2 candidates? Or is DeSantis seen as almost a Trump light, or as Kayleigh McEnany recently said, Trump right?
Well, DeSantis is taking all kinds of incoming, which is surprising given that he's like 30 points behind Trump. But Trump famously punches down all the time. That's another thing that I've never seen in politics before, which is somebody like Trump punching down at people.
To be fair, Trump punches every direction he can.
Well, it's true. It's true. But we've seen many people punch up and sideways, but not down. But look at the reaction of Trump when Tim Scott got into the race. He welcomed him, said he was a great guy, worked with him on opportunity zones when Trump was president and Scott was in the Senate, welcomed him to the race and said he's a much better option than Ron the Sanctimonious, right? So he's using that moniker again, punching down at a guy 30 points below him in the polls. But interesting is that Nikki Haley has run an ad attacking DeSantis, saying he's just an echo of Trump. And they show Trump saying, make America great again. And then they show DeSantis's ad from his 2018 gubernatorial campaign, where he's telling his kids in a playful way, make America great again. And then it ends with a slogan that was first used by Barry Goldwater back in 1964, which is, we need a choice, not an echo. That is, and that's from Nikki Haley. So DeSantis is being surrounded by people trying to take him down, and he's going to have to prove that he can take a punch. He's proven that he can give one, but can he take one and give one back? That's always the challenge for anybody facing Trump. And the first thing DeSantis will have to do is actually utter Trump's name. He can't go on saying, we need to, for example, we need a fresh start. Okay, you need to say, we need to move on from Donald Trump. He's got to be able to say that and make it stick if he wants really to come from way behind and win this race.
And we'll be continuing this conversation after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe
You only
space.
did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5.